I'm Frank, and this is the Yamanote line ramen series. We are in Ōsaki today, a district of gleaming high-rises, but today we are going to be visiting a ramen restaurant that's been around since 1941. Let's go. This is episode 8 of the Yamanote Line ramen series. Last stop was Shinagawa, a major transport hub where I stretched the map a little to track down one of my favorite ramen shops in Tokyo. Today, we've moved one stop over to Ōsaki. Now, Ōsaki isn't exactly a ramen hotspot, but don't worry, I've got something special lined up here. And hey, depending on how hungry I get, we might even see more than one bowl today. Let's hit the ground. Okay, so we are making our way to the main ramen shop we'll be featuring in this Ōsaki episode. And walking around Ōsaki, it does feel like an extension of Shinagawa. You've got a lot of tall skyscrapers, but here, not all of them are office buildings. You've also got a lot of residential towers, and it's very developed around here, despite the fact that there's quite a bit of history. If you think about the Tokaido Road and what this area meant for Tokyo back in the day, it looks a little different these days. As such, I thought the best ramen shop to represent history would be Koraku, which has been around since 1941. Outside of Koraku, as you get in Shinagawa, there are not a crazy amount of strong contenders in terms of ramen shops. You get some chains here and there, but let's just say Ōsaki is not exactly known for high-level ramen. And in one episode in this series, I wanted to highlight a ramen shop that has been around for a while. And we kind of already did that in Yurakusho with Tiny Ramen. If you haven't checked out that episode, please do. But this is going to be a little bit different because they're older than Tiny Ramen, and therefore, they're also more like a Chinese restaurant than they are a ramen shop. This is how ramen started out, with Chinese roots. We'll talk about all of that in this episode as we grab a historic 1941 bowl. I'm now walking back and forth along the river like a crazy person. Let's talk about Koraku, the ramen shop I chose for this Ōsaki episode. Now, going in, I expected the ramen to be old school, just like the interior. This is a place that's been slinging ramen and Chinese food since 1941, so it's gonna be old school. It's gonna be simple is best, but I didn't expect I would like the ramen as much as I did. That was a great bowl. Beautiful soy sauce seasoning, a little bit sweet, relatively bold, holding up a chicken and pork soup. That was richer than I thought. It was quite oily, and I just felt like something punchy this morning. And that bowl very much took care of that. It was also made sweet by quite a bit of negi, or spring onions in the soup, along with some ginger infused into the soup. The noodles were much thicker than what you get in classic Tokyo shoyu ramen. They were beyond medium thick and quite frizzy. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to get just the ramen or get a little bit of chahan or fried rice on the side, because I am, after all, in a machichuka restaurant, which is basically translated to your local Chinese restaurant. I went with the half chahan and the ramen, and I'm pretty full after that. The chahan was big, half portion was very big, and that was all for 1,100 yen as of when I was making this video. My God, when I go to Chinese restaurants in Tokyo or anywhere in Japan, I'm always tempted to get hoikoro. This is a dish that I love ordering, but of course, I stuck to getting ramen. Maybe I'll do a hoikoro series at one point. Now, this ramen restaurant, or should I say Chinese restaurant, was very representative of how ramen was served back in the day. I love the fact that there's low tables, the faded photos of all of the dishes outside. You could just feel the history. It was amazing. Not that many people showed up when it was 11 when they opened. I went in, but we did have some salarymen there, 2 others, I think, sitting in other tables. And it's nice to have that whole table to yourself too, especially from a filming perspective with my camera and everything. Now, ramen was introduced to Japan in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when more Chinese immigrants were coming into the country. They were bringing Chinese noodle dishes from home, and these dishes eventually evolved into ramen. And places like Koraku represent that earlier stage of ramen when it was closer to what is served in China. And I feel like this ramen I had, again, a pleasant surprise in terms of how much I liked it. Not that I would have disliked it, but I really liked it. And I feel like this was a fine-tuned version of that. Much more refined, the soup, than I would thought. The noodles, the quality was much better than I would have thought, and so forth. And that chahan, we mustn't forget, was delicious too. Nice and buttery, good pieces of pork, fluffy egg in there. Oh, fantastic. Glad I got the chahan, even though I'm a little full after that. I had to move. I was getting eaten alive by mosquitoes out there. And I just walked through Gate City, which I haven't been inside in a long time. And think of it as one of the big commercial complexes out here. We've got offices inside, but also a lot of restaurants in their plaza section. I
do like a big atrium, and that's what you get at the plaza section. So if you need to protect yourself from the elements, head inside the plaza. And I just made an executive decision. We'll be visiting a second ramen shop here in Ōsaki, and this is not... I find myself walking back to the river again, Meguro River. And I think I was cut off when I was last talking because I saw the lineup at Waichi, our second ramen shop, and I was like, I gotta get in line. I have to say, I'm pretty darn full. Executive decision to get a second bowl of ramen, but I was like, why not? I'm still hungry. That was a lot of ramen. The noodles were really big in the first place, and then the second place, the noodles were just as big, actually bigger. And this place, Waichi, it's actually one of the top ranked places in Shimbashi, a place I hadn't got a chance to visit in Stack Shimbashi. Check out that episode too if you haven't watched it. And this is Waichi's Ōsaki branch. On the one hand, I always make it a point to visit the flagship or the Honten, but at the same time, while there is this maybe mystical power associated with the flagship shop, visiting a satellite shop can be much more convenient. And in theory, the ramen should be exactly the same, especially for these high-level places that are so particular about how their ramen is made. And I was curious about visiting Waichi because you don't have too many places that do this style of ramen. That is Tsubame Sanjo ramen from Niigata, one of the most famous prefectures in Japan for ramen. They have 5 big styles of ramen, just like they do in Yamagata. And on the menu here, they serve Tsubame Sanjo and also Nagaoka ginger shoyu ramen. The Tsubame Sanjo is the one that they are pushing as their signature dish and the one I felt like eating. Tsubame Sanjo is a cold part of Niigata. Well, let's just say the whole prefecture is really cold and snowy in the winter. It's on the Japan seaside, and that's probably another reason why they love their ramen. And Tsubame Sanjo ramen, when I visited Tsubame, it was freezing cold. I was trekking in the snow with my suitcase, a rolly suitcase, not very practical, but it was the perfect, let's say, conditions to enjoy that bowl of ramen. And what Tsubame Sanjo style ramen is basically thick, wavy noodles in a soup that is soy sauce powered with a lot of seabura, or sweet-tasting pork back fat. Not as heavy as it sounds. It could be that this was my second bowl of the day. This was a great bowl. It didn't hit quite as well as the Oji ramen at Koshu Ichiba did, but this is very good still. Here, I feel like the niboshi flavor was stronger. There was a certain bitterness. I think that was more present than the flagship shop where this style started. But everything else was pretty similar. You had a good amount of seabura, pork back fat floating around, making broth sweeter, which provided nice balance to the niboshi or dried fish bitterness, white raw onions in the soup, also a nice contrast with the niboshi flavors. Quite a bit of seaweed, and not the sheets of seaweed too. Overall, this is an underappreciated style that not even a lot of Japanese know about. And I'm glad there's a Tokyo spot in Waichi that's doing this style. Nothing beats the real thing, but this was as good as it gets in Tokyo, and I'm glad I went. Last thing, I was deciding between shoyu or shio. I went with the shoyu in the end, which was pretty salty and pretty bold, only because this style is shoyu originally. Part of me wanted to do shio just because it's becoming the shoyu ramen roadshow, I think, this series, but I think shio would have been, in a way, not inauthentic, but let's just say not the best way for me to compare the original bowl with this. Didn't think I would, but I had 2 bowls here in Osaki, an area that's not exactly known for ramen. And these 2 bowls are actually on the same street. Koraku, as I walked by, had a line it was nice to see, which was the same at Waichi, basically because we're still in the 12 p.m. territory. Spoken on and on about Ōsaki and the ramen here. I think we'll call it a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this video in the Yamanote line ramen series here in Ōsaki. If you liked the video, please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will otherwise see you in the next episode. We are again going to be hugging the river and visiting Gotanda, which has some amazing ramen shops, and we'll be joined by a guest too. This will be fun, so you don't just have to listen to me go on and on by myself about ramen in the area. And I think the ramen shop we're going to be visiting is known as one of the spiciest in Tokyo. I'll have to mentally prepare for this one. Thanks for tuning in, and hope to see you in the next episode. Frank from 5am Ramen signing out.